Welcome, welcome, friends. Oh, it's so good to see all of you. This is the Edgewalker Café on October 24th, 2024. And our special topic today is Edgewalkers as Nomads. And this came about as a conversation that started maybe, Patricia, I'm not sure if it was 20 years ago when you first were talking about going to Hawaii and selling everything and just following the calling to live a different way, to follow your heart. And that was a long time ago. And you've shared your journey in the Edgewalker blogs. And then Susan has done something very similar in her life. And talking to Ximena recently, the same thing of feeling this urge, this sense of adventure and a sense of there's something out there that I need to be responding to. And all I know is the next step, but I'm going to trust that. And I think each of you in your lives can relate to that in one way or another. So we're welcoming you to this conversation of Edgewalkers as Nomads. It's really a wonderful conversation about finding your calling and following your calling. And so I'm going to turn it over now to Ximena, who is a consultant now and a real partner in the Edgewalker community. And Ximena is hosting and holding space for our conversation today. Over to you, Ximena.
Thank you, Judy, and welcome everyone to today's Edgewalker Cafe. I'd like to begin today's conversation with just a moment of silence and a moment of reflection. Just going to read a couple of words to bring us to this space, ground ourselves, and open our hearts, and just have this. I think will be a quite vulnerable conversation about being a nomad, rootlessness. So let's. I'm going to guide you through just a short contemplation. To begin our conversation about nomadic lives, roots, and rootlessness, let us take a moment to fully arrive and be present in this shared space. As you ground yourself, imagine roots extending from your feet, anchoring you to the earth. Breathe deeply and allow yourself to feel connected to this moment and with each other in today's conversation. In this grounded state, we will today explore the idea of being a nomad, the concept of roots, the experience of rootlessness, of change. So let us begin our journey together. Okay, so I hope we're all here, truly here, because I think if you're drawn to this community, there's a nugget, like a filament of being a nomad, even if you've lived all all your life in one place, or you've moved around. So I think we're all in good company, and we share something just by being here. So today's conversation is going to be with Susan and with Patricia. And as Judy has shared, we're going to, we all just, out of happenstance, we're all somewhat, nomads in different ways. So I thought we could begin today's conversation asking Susan and Patricia, what is it like to be a nomad? How are you a nomad? Both in being, and also, I guess, in the practical sense, like places you've lived, maybe jobs. So I'd like to open this space to you.
Patricia, you got up early today. You're in Hawaii, 6:30 in the morning. Take us into the day. Take us in.
You want me to start? Okay, good morning,
Yeah.
everybody. Aloha from Maui. 6 a.m. The sun's just coming up. I arrived yesterday, so I'm on East Coast time. So I'm awake with you. But thank you all for being with us. And back in 2004, I was living in Naples, Florida, and I had a fire. This is sort of set the stage, and I lost everything. And physically, my place, my material possessions, everything. And looking back, it was traumatic at the time. It was actually one of the most liberating experiences of my life because it changed my relationship to needing material things. I appreciate them, love beautiful homes, love beautiful places, appreciate beautiful things, but I don't need them anymore. So I didn't know it, but at the time, I was very attached to that, needing all of those things and that perfect home, and everything had to be such just so. And at some level, for my growth, this is not true of everybody, it was stifling me and keeping me stuck. So that experience, that was actually 20 years ago, that experience, and I remember the fire was very toxic, and walking around and the experience of looking at everything destroyed just like that, it was gone, and saying, wow, this doesn't really mean, this isn't what life's really about. And a lot of this is toxic. And do I really need all of this? And it was a huge impact. But it was something that I needed. And then right after that, my father died. What's really interesting, I have to just say, was a week ago, my mother died, like literally like 7 days ago. So it's really interesting that this is coming around now. There are no accidents, because back then it was right when my dad died, and now it's when my mom passed. And I think that I've learned, I mean, I could go on for 2 hours about this, but the bottom line is that even as a child, and this is more of a child story, but just quickly, home was not like a great place for me. And I grew up with a travel agent mother, God rest her soul, and a pilot. Like, my father was a captain with American Airlines and flew for 30 years. So I grew up traveling. All we did was travel. Everything was the next trip. And my parents made money by traveling, by moving around, by doing things. So I was sort of fertile from my childhood and moving out of our house when we were young, and my parents traveling, and that fire. I was ripe for this kind of life. And I think that I just haven't had a desire to buy things or land in new places. And I have a girlfriend who grew up with an IBM executive dad, and they moved all the time. And she said, you and I we're contrast junkies. And I know that's a strange sound, but I don't like to be in one place or do the same thing for too long. It doesn't mean I don't have routine and practices, but I have a desire to have a lot of experiences, to see the world. And that's the practical part about that. And just how, from a spiritual aspect, I mean, and Judy keeps saying we should write a book, but I have kept a journal since I met my husband in 2012 of every place we've been, because he sort of joined me on the journey later. And my trust in the universe and allowing the divine guidance and trusting the signs and getting out of my own way. And what I've needed is to connect with a home in here that I never felt, because I didn't really have that warm, heartfelt sense of home, except at my family beach house. But the home was not a safe, easy place. So I have found that wherever I am, I can ground in and feel that. And it's like a co-creation, a magic carpet ride with me and spirit, with me and the universe. And when I get out of the way, it is absolutely magical how all the details get handled, and the divine timing, the perfect place. It often involves other people who need me to be somewhere. A lot of it's been in Hawaii. It started on the Big Island, and then in Kauai, and now I'm on Maui, where I met Dario years ago. So I don't want to go on, but that's kind of the gist of where I've been all these years. And we keep trying to find a place, and what keeps happening is places keep getting offered to us that are actually keeping us from anchoring in one spot. So life keeps making it, I'm on the right path when you're aligned with spirit and your universe, you know, what your universal path is. The details really get handled, but it's a practice to understand that. So
Yeah,
I hope
how
that
right
answers
you
your
are.
question. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder. Well, gosh, Patricia, you know, questions, the universe of questions, and how wonderful that, although it was from experience of that none of us would like to have, and that's the flames coming in to have to break down so that you could break
Absolutely.
out, if you like. It's quite an amazing story, and of course, that's indeed what we're going to find, aren't we, when we explore the lives and the patterns and the essence of nomads, of which I have to say, today it's estimated there are more than 40 million nomads in the world, digital nomads, professional nomads, and just folding into how I, you know, can, if you like, wear that label. And as a communicator and a wordsmith, I know how important it is to have labels. Some of us, you know, are uncomfortable with them, but if we didn't use vocabulary to describe something, we wouldn't know what it is, would we? For example, if a table wasn't called a table, how would we know it was a table, for example?
Right.
And I'm honouring actually the work of Mel Toomey there. Mel Toomey is, of course, you know, Judy, you know, one of the godfathers of edgewalking and a very close friend of ours, who indeed has found his new home with your mum and your dad, Patricia, in heaven just a few years.
I know.
But yeah, but Mel would talk very much about the importance of vocabulary. The vocabulary that came into me, that helped me unleash and untether, was actually back in 2017, when, after nearly 4 decades or 3.5 decades in the workplace, I really felt that, Patricia, if I was going to move into my calling, and I would need, as you suggested, Ximena, I would need, in order to find my root, spelt R-O-U-T-E, I would need to untether the roots, R-W-O-O-T-S. And in order to do that, I had to untether from my career, bless it goodbye, in order to welcome in vocation. And in order to do that, I needed to also become lighter. So I needed to let go of some heaviness or tools and toolkit, etc. Not lived experiences, but carry them in a different way. Had to lighten my toolkit. So if you like, baggage, and pack luggage. I'm still practicing the packing of luggage, you know, hand luggage, light luggage, as opposed to heavy baggage. But if I go a few years back to when we first met, Patricia, Judy, maybe others in the room, in 2006, 2007, that's when I first met Judy and became an edgewalker as in the philosophy of Dr. Judy Neal's book. Because indeed, some would say, aren't we always an edgewalker, or whatever we are? And indeed, possibly I was, because at the age of 22, I left my home domain, the United Kingdom, where I am today, incidentally, and went to Arabia. I went to work on the island of Bahrain. And 43, 44 years later, I'm still in Arabia. And so the Arabian kinship to a nomad, of course, is a Bedouin. And, you know, a nomad, there are some fabulous definitions out there, but a nomad, you know, tends to travel for living and home and work and play and cultural aspects, experiences in different places, and of course guided today by technology, that's all possible. And Bedouins, of course, are much more the nomads of, if you like, trading and indeed hospitality. And I find such common denominators among the 40 million nomads that I bump into around the world. And of course, I've only touched a small 0.000 small percentage of it, unless we extend the definition and say, indeed, aren't we all nomads in our own right? And yesterday, Judy, you and I were having a conversation about the different types of nomads. You know, the nomads that might have a camper van or a mobile home in the yard and use it for a number of months of the year. You know, nomads that travel regularly for their work. You know, actually a lot, I might suggest that a lot of corporate individuals that work in the corporate world who have to travel a lot are corporate nomads. They're traveling so much to get their business done. But looping it back round to me and the question, so in 2017, I really embraced a nomadic life. And you mentioned as well anchor, Ximena, and anchoring. And along came that curious Corona time, which did not welcome a nomad or a Bedouin. In fact, we had to anchor. In fact, we had to close down and lock in. And so I anchored again during Corona for the next 3 to 4 years. And I'm just unleashing now out into the world. And there's a lot of realities around why I'm doing that. And we can explore them if you would like. So can I put it back to you, Ximena, and you take it from here?
Sure. I've been taking notes because everything you both are saying is, I have a lot to, this is giving me a lot to think about, because I am a nomad from birth. Like I'm a third culture kid. I was born in Peru. My parents are Peruvian. My mom is half Italian. And because of my dad's job, we left Peru when I was 1. We moved to the States. We were there for 3.5 years. Then lived in the Philippines for 2.5 years, Bolivia 4 years, Argentina 5 years. We moved to Pakistan. We were supposed to do my senior year there. We all moved there. My brother had gone, to the US for college. We moved to Pakistan. I started the school there my senior year, which was really difficult. Just because of the year. I'd been in Argentina for 5 years, and then all of a sudden, I'm not going to be walking, the graduation with my friends. So, but then they were going to transfer my dad in the middle of the year. And then in the end, my mom and I returned to Argentina, and I finished my school there. And then my parents moved back home, to Peru, which was their transition coming home, experiencing reverse culture shock was difficult. And then I just started this kind of like bouncing around life. Went to college in the States, 4 years, worked a year in Chicago, then moved to Peru for the first time, which was, it's this whole nomad. I mean, I don't know how to explain it, like my relationship with being Peruvian and being thought I'm Peruvian and assumptions that people have of me is something that I even experienced it yesterday, where I was in a meeting, and I say this because it goes into the whole meaning of what is it to be a nomad. Like one can have an internal sense of being a nomad, but then because of people's when people place identities on you, then you can that can sometimes it can have professional implications. So I was in a meeting yesterday where the person had assumed that because I was Peruvian, that I knew a lot about this is in the concept of fundraising, that I knew a lot about the fundraising world here in Peru and research and getting funds. And I was just like, no, not really. So it brought up, this I guess, a tension, you know, like this swirl of emotions where I'm like, I know what I represent, a lot of things to different people, and navigating the assumptions, you know, something that now that I'm back in Peru, that I'm, you know, experiencing again. So all this to say, being a nomad, I have to remember to return to center and what it means to me, you know, and to be okay with that meaning not being fully understood by others.
Yeah.
You know? So I think that's what one of the questions in preparing for this, for today's cafe, was about risks. You know, like, what are some risks that we take, that we choose to take, or that are, you know, are appear in our path of, you know, as being a nomad. So that for me is one practical, you know, like, example of the, you know, there can be professional risks, you know, and being a nomad and people assuming things of you. But I, you know, just wanted to open this question to you, Susan.
Yeah, okay.
Well, sorry, thank you. Sorry, Patricia, you go first. Off
no,
you go.
it's so funny because two things. Thank you, Ximena, for that, and Susan as well for your sharing. Susan, I just want to say quickly, many years ago in 2011, I went out to see Susan for a month in Dubai, and we went to a Bedouin camp, and we went into the desert. And I remember saying, I don't know if it was you or Wendy at the time, saying, I've lived like that before. Like, I know I've done that in another time in life, if you believe in those things. But so just to comment on that, I think it's something that goes way back for me. And Ximena, I have, one of the most challenging things for me about being a nomad isn't like, where are you going to live and what are you going to do? It's people's response to, you know, your husband's in his 70s and you're in your 60s, and don't you think it's time you guys get a home? Like, it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And I don't know, a lot of people I find, not that are envious, but wish that they could do it, because they're so logged down by houses and material things and obligations. So one of the things that we have is a tremendous amount of freedom, which has been a high value of mine since I was young. I love freedom, whatever that means, you know, so it's playing out in my lifestyle choices. But I definitely, a lot of people have opinions, and I hate to use the word judgments, but it just doesn't make sense to people. Like, how can you live like this? And some people are like, wow, I wish I could live like that. So I think that it's just knowing that wherever we are in our life, like, this is just our journey, and it's what I've needed. And even Dario, to learn, a lot of them have been deeper spiritual lessons. And I don't know, I've had to learn to be really centered in myself and my choices, in spite of what the outside world might reflect or say to me. And just, you know, everyone can have their choices and their opinions. But that's probably been the most challenging thing for me, including my dear departed mother, and everybody else is like, I don't understand. How do you guys live like that? And it's like, you know what I've learned to say? I know, it's so fabulous. It's great. Instead of explaining, and you know, we've lived in amazing places. So and having that freedom and the flexibility, it gives you actually more choices. But sometimes it can also be tiring. It could be exhausting moving around. So I'll definitely put that in there as well. So back to you, Susan.
Well, thank you, Patricia. And of course, you know, as with all stories and all experiences of life, we're all different. I mean, there are, you know, Mark Wentworth's in the room, and he helps us with the language of color and color for life, and each color, as with Pythagoras and numerology and the Enneagram, brings in an energy, and we all have a personal life color. And if we take it back to Edgewalkers, of course, we've got 5 archetypes. And so, you know, if we've got a dominant archetype, it might indeed be hearth tender or placeholder and not Edgewalker. So we have to stretch
Right.
to really come in and wear the Edgewalker overcoat or lens. And it's all perhaps about practice. And indeed, although with you, Patricia, with Judy's you know, great, I don't know, support learning with us and giving us so much, we've been able to really embrace the whole philosophy of Edgewalkers. And of course, I've always called myself a guardian, which is the fifth archetype of an Edgewalker. And before we called it a guardian, actually in its birthdays, it was called a doomsayer. And the doomsayer definition, or a label, want of a better word again, would really unsettle people, except not me. I said, I will be the chief doomsayer. And the doomsayer really is just the polarity of an Edgewalker. If an Edgewalker is the one out there going, oh, look at that, go ahead. I can see the future. I can sense where we're going. And of course, sensing the future is the first skill of an Edgewalker, or indeed knowing this future, the first skill of an Edgewalker. The doomsayer, or now guardian, would indeed also see the future, would also see these nuances, but carry a pocket full of red flags and be saying, hang on, watch out, Edgewalker and Flamekeeper. And, you know, in order to embrace this nomadic life second time around, AC, after Corona, of course, BC, before Corona, AC, I've unleashed, Judy, this is news to both of us, because I've just realized I've unleashed the dominant archetype of the guardian, and it's deep within my very being, and I'm embracing Edgewalker. Why? Because I actually, not due to the fire, but maybe due to the sweep of the curious Corona time, have now really unleashed everything that I own, aside from, and it still feels too heavy, still doesn't feel like luggage yet, 8 suitcases. And in those suitcases are earrings and, you know, my favorite rings and a jacket, you know, because I feel as well that we are who we are. So whilst I was dog walking this morning, so, you know, I'm out with my Wellington boots and doing all of the other stuff. But, you know, I feel my core is still coming through, and I'm going to join as we are, the 3, 4 of us, all of us in the room. And I know there are many of us here that really walk on the leading edge, whether it's true nomadic or not, that I'm going to join those 40 million nomads, of which, incidentally, nearly 50% are from the United States. All
interesting.
Of you in the United States. And a quick analogy, really, for me, from Mother Nature. And of course, you know, nature quests and looking at nature for how we can reuse, how we can recycle, how we can be liberated, how we can copulate, how we can co-create, how we can collaborate. It's so strong. I look towards the hermit crab, you know, and the hermit crab carries its home on its back, metaphorically. And indeed, its shell isn't its only shell. It shares shells. It's called the vacant shell syndrome when I've done a little bit of research on it, because a friend of mine, Evelyn Bray in Ras Al Khaimah, 3 birthdays ago, gave me a hermit crab. And if Evelyn will be listening ever to the recording, because I can't see her in the room, I've kept that. It's in one of my 8 suitcases, as almost a knowing that I'll use someone else's vacant shell. I will go where my curiosity takes me, and I will share. The hermit crabs are very self-sufficient. They really like their independence. They can find their own food, but they love community. And many of you will know that as a communicator, it's all about community first. It's all about communityship, and particularly in the digital world. And as we're, like it or lump it, moving from Web3 up into Web3, you know, the immersive world where community is so critical, from this Web2 that we are now. And Judy, I want to really thank you so much, because in blessing my career goodbye and embracing vocation, the calling a calling, you know, whatever that calling is, and I'm still looking and listening and hearing, and Mark Wentworth has helped me, Tricia Evans has helped me, Sue Brightman, you're drinking your coffee, but you really have helped me. My sister Dawn is in the room, Dawn Nasser has helped me. Amy, you have, Amy Burstein, and the other Amy, and Peggy O'Neill. I mean, what an Edgewalker, and what a nomad, because you nomad in many different ways, Peggy, in as much as you share so much, and you also, of course, have moved both professionally and in terms of residences over the years, and done so much. So thank you all so much. I can also see Jim Lockhart in the room, who is a wonderful nomad. I think that's Jim, is it? No, it isn't. But anyway, Max, you look like Jim without my glasses on. So I just want to say there are 800 species of hermit crabs. So, 5 archetypes circling back in might not be enough to feel us all as we're moving out into this world. But certainly, of course, it will unsettle some. But the more we are centered into how this lifestyle liberates us, and I am a Libra, and October the 1st was my birthday, liberates us. It's just, it becomes light luggage without light luggage. So, Ximena, does any of that speak to you?
Everything. I'm looking at the time, and I'm just like, I wish we could pause time and just continue this conversation, because it's having come back to Peru, come back home in a sense, geographic home. I'm right now in this very big transition of deciding what it is what am I feeling, and I mean, and I use the word deciding purposefully, because I think it's a decision to fall into a feeling, to really embrace it, and to one can decide to ignore it, one can decide to just be in one's head, or one can decide to be like, okay, right, let's be here, let's see what's going on. And everything that you said about the hermit crab, about the self-sufficiency, and yet being in community, and the sharing, and that really resonates to me, because I'm actually having friends over tomorrow that I haven't seen in 8 years, I think. So I'm coming back, and I see myself being nervous. I feel nervous in going and seeing them, because I look back and I'm like, what have I done in the last 8 years? It brings questions like, have I had to accomplish something? And then, but I think just being a nomad and surviving, I guess surviving or living it, or embracing it, I think is, and I'm going all over the place, but it's we'll see. Everything that's been said, resonates with me, and I think I'm going to come back and watch this recording soon. And so I think this is a perfect time to, Susan, you mentioned people by name that are nomads, in many different respects. So I would love to open this, this space up now to everybody. I don't know if anybody has any questions or want to share their stories, thoughts.
What I think is really interesting, if I might dip in there, and this is taking the second skill of an Edgewalker, which was mentioned earlier, and that's risk taking, embracing the unknown and just coming into the moment. I mean, you've mentioned that Ximena, that you've embraced the nomadic lifestyle almost from birth, I think, as a third culture kid. And you don't have to come on camera, but Tricia Evans, you're not on camera at the minute. Would you like to talk about you know, bringing up a third culture child, your gorgeous daughter, Sian, and indeed how you embrace life as, you know, a mum, a single mum that brought up this daughter in Arabia. Are you there, Tricia, or can we not have you? She is, there she is. Tricia Evans from Ras Al Khaimah. Mute, we need you off mute.
Right. Yeah. Hi, Susan. Hi, everybody. It's been great raising a third culture kid, and I was very aware of it from the time my daughter was born, really, because my ex-husband's he's British, but he was half Singaporean. So my daughter looks like a little Asian beauty, really. So she was always a little bit different, and she was born and raised in Dubai. Very, very aware that we've got a strong family back at home, and that's great. And my mum was really sweet, because mum lived with us for about 2 or 3 months a year, and when Sian was little, and it was absolutely fantastic. She was determined that Sian knew that it might have been me and Sian as a single mum in Dubai, but she was part of this much wider, bigger family back in UK. So she always sort of felt a bit threatened by the third culture thing. She said, oh, you know, you should be back at home, back in the safety of home. But I think it's great. The third culture kids, there's real advantages. I think she straddled well, at least 2 worlds. You know, if you're in a room in the UAE, I mean, today, for example, I was with a group of 10 people, and there's 8 different nationalities, and that's been the norm for 31 years. And that's what the norm has been for Sian, raised with every single colour, race, religion, everything. And that gives a remarkable tolerance, and I've loved that. It's been fantastic. So so that's the real advantages. It makes you very versatile. It means that you can be dumped pretty much anywhere. I was listening to some of you talking before. You just sort of figure it out. And she's very, very good at that. There's a big downside, though, and it's a sense of rootlessness. And she's really, really struggled with, who am I? Where do I come from? Where do I belong? And it's interesting, something we talk about now as a young adult. But it's been very interesting. I was very aware of it, and I've read loads of books, and I had a friend who wrote books on this. So it was a super subject. But this whole topic, I mean, is great. And I think it's, I'm amazed how many people are living this nomadic life these days. Yeah, Susan got me thinking about living on a cruise ship for a year or so.
Well, did you remember
Yeah,
Dawn and I looked at that? Yeah, Tricia,
I want to do that too.
Yeah. Thank you, Tricia, for bringing that in. And I thought, Ximena, if it's okay, that to take it from the third culture kid, bearing in mind we're just all adult kids, right, over to the elder side, and call you in, Sue Brightman, because about 5 or 6 years ago, you interviewed, you can tell us how many women over 50. And I have a feeling a lot of those showed this sort of restlessness and penchant for movement of different shapes and forms. You're nodding. Am I right, Sue?
Yes. So I interviewed 100 women in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and then a couple women in their 80s and one in her 90s. And just for backdrop, my curiosity was really what is going on with us at this stage of life. And my curiosity came from what was going on with me, right? And so indeed, Susan, I just, after 100 interviews, these themes rose to my awareness, and I captured them in a book, and they were fascinating to me and somewhat unexpected. One of them, just speaking to this nomadic and home and such, one was how, and this is tied to nomadic living, I think, that to quote one of the women I interviewed, where physical fertility is waning, creative fertility is birthing. Now, what does it have to do with anything regarding home? Well, a lot, because at the same time, I heard these women who were all very conscious, right? And were able to talk about what was happening in their lives. And so there were cogent points that they were able to make. By the way, very diverse group of women across those decades. But one of the many things that came out was that the sense of being was just as, if not more important than the doing. And so there isn't a desire to contribute, whatever words we might want to use, contribute our gifts and talents, continue to learn and grow. Many of them continue to be edgewalkers, although they might not have used those words. But this sense of one of the chapters ended up being what a woman gave me in her words was about exquisite being. How do I exquisitely be in the way I want to be, which might be completely untethering, and often was, I heard in these interviews, and has been for me, untethering from these traditional, as you've been speaking to, all of you have been speaking to, these traditional structures. So home as a traditional structure, career as a traditional structure, relationship, community, church, lots of things, right? But this notion of how do I be and how do I walk in the way I want to be and who I know myself to be, and what are the implications? And so there were many stories about women. Of course, it happened to be all women. I didn't interview men, but recognizing the desire and the almost the call to give up. I remember one woman saying, I have spent decades on this gorgeous garden that I love. She said, I love my garden, but I realized it was time for me to let it go. And she was into one of the stories you told, who not bought an RV in the old fashioned way of get an RV and be sort of purposeless and be out on the road, but very, very purposeful, homing into an RV and living very purposefully along the way. Her way was connected to a national organization and stopping along the way. And she's still doing that to contribute in these local representations of this national organization. But there were so many gorgeous themes that came up and that I hear us embracing and talking about in this group. And for me, I would say, I'll just deposit this as a last comment because it's stirring in me that I think I was born a nomad. I was born with to be out there.
Right.
And I became a single parent and I couldn't. And so what do you do when there's this call to be out there, and then there are children who need grounding and all, many ways to ground, but that's been a dilemma for me. And it's interesting how when the call is there, I think we find a way. I think find a way because we have to, because we'll jump out of our skin if we can't marry what's needing to happen with the call to be nomadic. And for me, it came through global consulting, and I had to travel. And, I could go on and on. But anyway, Susan, thank you for the question. I think it's so for us. I love this topic.
Well, thank you, Sue, very, very much. Ximena, I can see, I know you're kindly coordinators, but Amy had her hand up, and I could hear Patricia probably also would like to talk.
This one.
Yeah, Amy.
Yeah, thank you. When I was in my 20s, I was a nomad. So I lived in Morocco and Spain and England and, different countries, and it was wonderful. At this time in my life, I'm a nomad, but I stay in South Florida. And I recognize now, whereas before you were talking about how, for example, something happens in life, your house burns down, and that gets you on the road, that gets you onto a path of self-development from what happens physically in life, inspires personal growth. At this point in my life, it's kind of reversed. So my journey now is about shifting internally. So going to shifting into an upgraded character that operates from a finer dimension. And that's my path. That's my path now. And what I'm noticing is as that happens, then the physical world changes for me. I've also noticed that it happens in episodes. So, your house burns down and now you're in this new chapter. And yes, whether you're playing it physically or spiritually, energetically, yes, you need courage and yes, you need curiosity, and it seems like what goes up goes down and what goes down goes up. So, you started off, Xima, with talking about roots, as we have those experiences of your house burns down or you have to change careers or, whatever it is that's happening in your life, it brings you down. And as we get comfortable in the depth of that, going even beyond my root system, going really into that dark, what begins to happen is I emerge up higher than I ever could consider, and now all of a sudden, physically things are pretty good in my life. Hey, now I have this, 7-year episode or however many years, where things are cool. And then they start going down again. You know what I mean? So it's, that's the journey. That's the journey. But the essence for me now, what I've learned is every lifetime is about the soul returning to the soul, the self returning to the soul, so, and you go little by little, goes, hey, I'm not Christ, I'm not Buddha, I'm going little by little, getting closer, getting closer. And at the end of my life, that nomadic journey will affect all my reincarnations and all the aspects of myself. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Thank you, Amy. Yeah. I wanted, if I could make a quick comment. Yeah. Oh, Susan, can I just take a quick comment to what Amy said? Because for me, this journey has been, the bottom line has been about my soul's evolution. Really, that's the bottom line. This whole Edgewalker nomadic journey, that's what it is for me. All the other things are secondary to the evolution of my soul. That's what this has been. And it also, being an inherent nomad, is why I chose to not have children from like age 12. I always knew I didn't want children. I felt like it would, listening to what Sue said and some other people, and my husband too, he doesn't have children. And he left Rome when he was young and went on his nomadic journey. Something in me knew that having children would keep me from what I needed to do for my particular soul journey. I just want to recommend 2 books that people probably know about that had a huge influence on me that are relevant to this. Is both of them by Michael Singer. A lot of you have probably read The Untethered Soul. Huge impact. And The Surrender Experiment is, wow, that's about his journey. So I just want to throw that in as sort of resources if anyone wants to read deeper, if they haven't read either The Surrender Experiment or The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. So I'm complete. Thank you.
Ximena.
Yes, Val, I think you had an excellent question in the chat. By who? I mean, what they took in and through themselves. Don't we all take ourselves with us as we wander? I was wondering, Val, if you can speak a little bit to that, and then we can kind of, because I think that kind of can wrap up our conversation, and then we can go into announcements and then just a quick contemplation. So Val, please.
We need you off
You're
mute.
muted.
Yeah.
That comes from the experience over the years of hearing many people report about their travels. And for all but one of them, the feeling that I had was they didn't travel, they were going to the zoo. They were watching and looking at what they were seeing in the same way that you or I would watch and look at the animals in a zoo. Except for the one exception was a woman who every year during her summers when she was not teaching, went to live in several places around the world and used that experience to make her teaching of her children at school more effective and more broad. So I do think that every one of us, wherever we go, we take ourselves with us. How many of us have tried to escape our problems? I know I have, by moving. And the problem with that is I take myself with me. And so the other part of it is recognizing that I think simply recognizing that however we travel, we take ourselves with us, but we don't have to stay as we are when we left where we were going. We can be open to changing. We can be open to rethinking. We can be open to being deepened. We can be open to, I really believe that the divine spirit works in us when life throws at us questions that our current answers can't satisfy. And it's working through those that make us a better human being. So that's all of what's kind of going through my mind as I listen. And I also think that we can travel without leaving our home. I think we can be a nomad without ever leaving where we are. So I'm a little uncomfortable that physical travel seems to be the main image. My wife used to say, there's Val, he's on vacation, but he hasn't left the farm. There's something in that. So I'll stop because time is getting short, but that's why I mentioned what. And I put in the observation that almost all of the faiths in the world hold nomads as their primary people that they learn from and take. The true definition of a nomad is that they wander, but they wander without a purpose or goal. I do not think that that's what you're talking about. There is a purpose, there is a goal there, and the goal we sometimes discover as we travel.
Thank you, Val. I think that perfectly captures, is a perfect rounding of our conversation.
Me too.
Today.
Thank you.
Really, thank you. So I just want to give a couple of minutes to anyone who have any announcements coming up for, Judy, I don't know if you're unmuted.
I can go ahead and start, and there might be other things people want to announce. First of all, this conversation is really deep and vulnerable and exciting. And it's, well, actually, I want to say, when I first was writing Edgewalkers, the subtitle I wanted for the book was The New Global Human. And so I think this nomadic call is an evolutionary call. And there are sacrifices that are made, but as Val was talking about, the spiritual teachers in each tradition really carry wisdom from one place to another, and then they learn more wisdom and they carry that to the next place. And that helps us all to collectively evolve. And the place might be a Zoom room, one Zoom room to another. It doesn't have to be a physical place. Thank goodness for this technology that has made us all more global humans. And I want to just throw this out there that in conversations with Ximena and Patricia and Susan, each of their stories is so inspiring. And I began fantasizing that there might be like an edited book that Ximena and I are talking about. Maybe she might take on an editorial role to pull together more stories and the lessons learned from the nomadic way of life. And it may not be, the nomadic experience, because I'm nomadic every summer. And we have an RV and we go to folk festivals and we travel to Europe and we go different places, primarily to be with friends. And so it's community of communities. There's just different ways that we live between worlds and on the edge of our own growth, the growth of our soul, as Patricia has said. So something might emerge out of this that we could all collectively contribute. And so that will be fun. And so a couple of announcements. The next Edgewalker certification course starts in 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. We're already sending out information to participants on the pre-work. And you can find out about that on the Edgewalker website or just contact me. The next Edgewalker Café is on November 26th. And our host for that is Amy Lynn Durham. And Amy, do you want to say anything about your guest, Aaron Topico?
Sure. He's amazing. Dr. Yeah, Dr. Aaron Tobacco. He's a dear friend of mine. He's extremely magical, and he is going to exercise some vulnerability and some risk taking. One of the Edgewalker skills, talking about something that he's really passionate about, breaking time and quantum presence. So it's going to be an amazing experience. Hope everyone comes.
It'll be magical, Amy.
Yes.
And then the following cafe is December 12th, and I'm hosting that. And the topic I want to share with you, maybe do a little bit of workshop kind of practice together, is writing as an Edgewalker practice. How we can use writing to help us walk between worlds and build bridges between those worlds. And we'll talk some practical things about writing and publication and so on, but also the spiritual practice of writing. And then end of January 30th, Monica Ross is going to be doing an Edgewalker Cafe on the topic of navigating our edges with compassion, confidence and compassion. And Monica, you want to say a little bit more about that yourself? Is she still here?
Yep.
Oh, there you are.
So, we all have different edges that we're walking. Some are internal edges, some are external. Whether we're staying in the one place or nomads, there are life edges. And using the Edgewalker skills and qualities of being, how we tap into those and how we use them. But I'm also going to bring some embodied work around how we navigate edges and some other creative ways of looking at it. So it will be very experiential and hopefully a lot of fun.
I have no doubt about that, knowing you, Monica. And just to thank Monica again for hosting the Edgewalker retreat in Ireland in July, and Kristen and Tracy. Well, Kristen was hosting the Edgewalker journey, the Santiago de Compostela pilgrimage that Tracy went on, and really walking on their own leading edges. So we'd like to hear more about these experiences. In April, Debbie Runlet is going to be hosting an Edgewalker retreat in Connecticut. So there's virtual events that we get to be together and share our stories and learn from each other. And then we're also more being able to be community in person. It's a dance between these things. And so there's lots of good things coming up. I think I'm complete with that. So I'll turn it back over to you, Ximena. Thank you so much.
So I have just a few, want to guide you to close this today's conversation with actually a card that Monica shared in the chat.
Oh yeah.
Which I read it, and I think it's just a perfect way to tie everything together, especially with what Val said at the end with, you don't need to travel physically, geographically in order to travel, no, in order to be, to go somewhere else. So, and even, I want to read it out loud because this is a recording, whoever will listen to it can also, because it's in the chat right now. So if I read it out loud, anybody who sees the recording can hear it. So if we want to just take a moment, can close your eyes, keep them open, just take a moment to ground ourselves again, because we've flown away, flown around, we've shared all these stories, we've become untethered, or at least I've become untethered, and just with dreams and ideas and self-reflection. So coming back to where I am, Monica shared a card entitled Home from the Journey Cards by Brandon Bays. Do you long to come home? Call off the search. be here in this moment. Nothing on the outside can give you anything, for you are already complete, already fulfilled. You are all inclusive. You are home. You are that which you have been seeking. Just relax and sit around the warmth of the fire of your own heart.
Mm,
Thank you, Monica, for sharing.
gorgeous. Yeah.
for sharing this.
Wow. Thank you.
Okay. And thank you all. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Judy, for
Thank
bringing
you.
this together. You know, the thread between all of us. And I hope to see you in the next cafe. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you, Ximena. This is wonderful. Thank you, Susan and Patricia.
Thank you, Judy, Susan.
Thank
and
you
we're-
all. So good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ximena. That was wonderful.
Will the panel please stay on for a moment after we close this?
Of course.
Thank you.